Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm Randy Ramos, the CEO of Global Business Solutions. I'm excited because we're going to talk to the one and only, and none other than Mr. Mark Rogers. Yeah, I know, right. Now you're saying, who? Exactly. So, similarly, you might not know the name of Elon Musk, but maybe you're familiar with Elon Musk and what he did. And what he did was he designed and he built the Tesla electric car. Well, Elon Musk knows who Mark Rogers is because Mark hacked his car. That's right, Mark is known as the hacker that hacked the Tesla. He's also famous for hacking Apple's Touch ID iPhone security. Mark is now the VP of Cybersecurity at Okta. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that generous introduction.
Yeah, I think kids are probably really excited. I know right now that probably the chat is blowing up because they want to know how to be a hacker and all of that. But you know, let's just go through a discussion here, a conversation. Let's just talk about some things. So how did you really get interested in cybersecurity, or how did you get started?
So when I first started, it wasn't actually called cybersecurity. I just knew it as playing with computers. I got given a computer in the United Kingdom called the BBC Micro, and I wrote a program on it. Basically, just a simple password program, like written in BASIC. And then I later discovered that this password program bore a strong resemblance to the programs that I accessed in the school that I was going to. And so I played around with it and I tried running the program at school. And basically I built a phishing website. I was able to get people to log into my password program instead of the real program, collect their credentials and gain access. And from that point onwards, I guess I was a hacker. But I didn't think of it as that. I just thought of it as a way to get access to interesting things and to play with stuff. And later on, I started doing more of that, getting access to things. There's a discipline of hacking called phreaking, which is all about telephones. Well, in my case, I just wanted cheap or free phone calls because all of the cool people I knew were in America, and a lot of the BBS boards, which were like chat systems back in the 80s and 90s, you had to telephone in order to get access to, and that cost money. And of course, my parents weren't going to subsidize me calling all of these sites non-stop, tying the phone up. And so I started playing around, and I discovered that the phone system is just a giant computer. In fact, it's a giant network of computers. And as you played around with it, you realize you could do stuff with it. It's kind of hard to demonstrate some of this stuff now because like technology has moved on so much. But if you've ever played with a rotary telephone, you know, one of the ones with a circular dial and a handle on it, well, one of the first things you learn is that you can, the ones where they've taken the dial off and it just has a button that says call help desk or call security or whatever, you can just tap the cradle, and as you tap tap it 7 times, tap it 8 times, you've just dialed 178. And you can keep doing that until you tap in a whole phone number. And suddenly you're now able to use a phone that no one was supposed to be able to use and call out and make phone calls to random places. And I started thinking, like, what else can you do? And so it's kind of, it sort of blossomed from there, from getting phone calls to get access to information. BBSs gave me more knowledge, and I played around with more things, and it grew. And that's actually kind of the secret of hacking, is that everyone who has ever become really good at hacking is passionate about playing with it, who is somebody who likes to explore things, to understand how they work, but most importantly, has to want to learn to try and make things work the way they want them to work.
Well, that's kind of interesting, that comment that you made about how things have changed. The analog phone to the digital phone, the rotary phone to the digital phone. So, what would you say if you were to talk, cybersecurity? What have you seen change, since you started?
Oh, the whole world. I mean, it's hey, back when I started, you could take a modem and you could dial a block of numbers. It was actually called war dialing. And if you ever watch the film War Games, you'll see Matthew Broderick, the hero in the movie, doing exactly this to get access to NORAD. Um, but back then, computers were on telephones, and so you could just dial them up and just literally go through all the phone numbers until you found the ones that had interesting computers on. And the security on those computers was almost non-existent. In fact, I remember that a well-known financial institution that's still around today, the password on the switches they used to use, which are the things that made the network for their system, were just three numbers. Two numbers for the password and one number for the identity that you were accessing. And it had a default one that when you dialed it with a modem would scroll up as a test to make sure you always knew how to get in. Because back then, there was no concept of people breaking into things. It was all about how do I make access easy for engineers and stuff. And so as hackers started to emerge, as people started to play with these things, that's when cybersecurity itself was born. Because before that, there really wasn't a driver, a need to put in place complicated passwords or to look at the security of these things. It wasn't until someone broke things that people suddenly realized, okay, we should probably fix that.
So that man, you bring up something else. So you're talking about, there didn't used to be really passwords, and then passwords were really just, just a couple of numbers. Now we talk about hardening passwords. And so when we talk about these things, and so now sometimes it's a fingerprint touch or an eye scan. How do you stay up with these things, and where do you get information? I mean, how do you know the new tools and the innovation and where things are going?
See, this is where what I mentioned previously, the passion, is really important, because when you look on a lot of the movies, hacking is this kind of really exciting thing where you see this guy go on the keyboard and he messes around with his fingers and stuff flies up and down on the screen, and then suddenly he's broken into stuff. Real hacking isn't like that. Real hacking is really boring. Real hacking is going through blocks of paper, reading about how things work. It's about reading lines of code inside a program. It's about understanding how a system is put together like blocks of Lego, and then working out how to take it all apart again. And then once you've done that, you know how to break into it. And so staying on top of it is kind of the same principle. You do it. You play around with it. I have test systems at home that I put the latest operating systems on and I break them. I always buy the newest phone that comes out, and I sit there and I play with it and I look at what weaknesses I can find in it and think about the ways in which it can be manipulated. Because security is a constantly evolving thing. In the cybersecurity industry, they talk about the evolving threat landscape. That's just a fancy term for it's all a big game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Somebody breaks something, so somebody else fixes it with a clever solution. Then somebody comes up with a way to break that, and then somebody fixes that, and it moves on. And so you mentioned the evolution from just identity, as in just a few numbers, to identity and password, to then we had things like two-factor authentication. We have a thing that spits out some numbers that you put in with your password. And then we have things like biometrics where you put your fingerprint down. Well, you know what? All of those have been broken because the game is still afoot. People are still moving from thing to thing to thing. So when Apple first brought out Touch ID on the iPhone 5S, I think, there was a competition in the InfoSec industry, and someone put up a web page that said, "Has Touch ID been hacked yet?" And so a bunch of us were like, "Let's do this."
the challenge.
24 hours later, I was able to bypass any iPhone with a fake fingerprint I made. And it was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And the way I did it was by looking into research. I went to universities and read papers on fingerprint analysis by other researchers who'd been looking at fingerprints as from a criminology perspective, from an identity perspective, from all sorts of different angles. And I tried to understand how fingerprints could be copied. How unique are they? How do you build a fingerprint that could be good enough that a piece of technology would think it's a real fingerprint? And you know what the answer was in the end? You could copy the fingerprint by using a camera, or by lifting a copy off of a glass that someone's touched.
Wow.
And then you can make a copy of it using Elmer's school glue. Elmer's school glue has just the right consistency to make a thin enough layer that you can put it on top of your finger, and just like they do in the movies, put your finger down on the thing and get past it.
Oh no, I can see all these students that are listening getting out Elmer's glue and putting it on their phones.
Well, there are a couple of steps in the middle that I left out. I think you're not going to get past that way, but you could. The very first bypass attack against fingerprints was called the gummy bear attack. And what the guy did was he chewed up a gummy bear until it was nice and squishy, and he put it down on the fingerprint reader. And when he lifted it up, it had a copy of the fingerprint that was last on it.
Wow.
And then when he put it back down again, the fingerprint reader read it and gave him access.
That's
incredible. Now, of course, the readers are much more smarter now. You know, you won't be able to do the same thing. But you know what? There's always a way past something.
You know, you talked about, you know, when we started this conversation, you talked about, you know, how you just some reading, you know, you're going to the library, there's actually stuff written about a lot of stuff. And today, you know, we could Google a lot of this stuff, and, you know, just the whole library is at our disposal for knowledge and gaining things. But I wanted to come back to a couple of statements that you made about, you know, just being so inquisitive, and then just wanting to try, you know, try again, you know, make a mistake and try again. But, you know, as students are listening to you talk right now, and they're trying to figure out how they can get into this field, you know, and of course they all want to be hackers, but we all know that, you know, the distance from, you know, hacking like you do and where they are in their school or college or career or wherever it is that they're moving, there's probably some basic fundamental skills, foundational things that they need to know. What if you were to guide them and say, look, you know, these are fundamentally the basic bones or foundations of knowledge, skill, or schooling, certifications, what would you say those are? What would you recommend?
It's kind of hard to know where to start, because what I would say is, first of all, that you should be led by your passion. Every hacker I know has a different area of passion. There are hackers who are really interested in hardware, and so they start off by learning about electronics, and they learn about how circuits work, and they learn about the different components you find, and they go down that route and they hack things that way. I'm a hardware hacker. It's not where I started, but it's one of the things that fascinates me. In fact, there was a large element of hardware hacking involved in hacking the Tesla. But then there are others who are interested in software. And so learning how software works and how the very systems that you want to go after works I guess the common thread is find out which aspect of it interests you the most, and then look at the roots of that, how it works. So if you're interested in software cybersecurity, you know, you want to be a hacker who can break into a web server, who can break into an online bank, or who can break into an IoT device, then the first thing you need to learn is, how does it work? What is the software that's running on it? And we're lucky today in that you can get access to most of this software. All you need is a laptop, and you can run entire companies worth of software for free on your laptop just by downloading it from the internet and playing with it. I would say setting up a website and setting up this kind of infrastructure is a great way to start learning it. The same on the hardware side of things. Take some things apart. You know, obviously, with all of this, the same rule applies. Make sure you get permission. Make sure you know who owns whatever it is that you're taking apart or playing with. And the technical term is reverse engineering. But make sure that you're doing it to something that you're entitled to do it to, because ethical hacking is at the core of what I do, and it's the core of what I like to teach. But you can learn a lot from taking things apart. At the hacker conference, DEF CON, which I'm one of the organizers of, we have a section for kids, and within that kids area, they do things like smash laptops, or take calculators and break them open, take screens and open them up. By looking inside things, you understand the bits, the building blocks that make them. And from understanding that, you can start to understand how things work. You're obviously going to need to learn a little bit more to actually be a hacker. But the reality is you can start doing some of the really basic stuff just by learning a few simple things. You know, how does a password get passed from the website that you go onto to the back-end system? Well, once you start to learn that, you'll learn that there are ways to input it. What does the code look like when your browser makes a request to a website and brings things back? All you have to do is turn on developer tools on Chrome, or look at the network on your laptop to see that. And once you look at how all this communication works, you'll start to see things. I know kids as young as 10 who, just from looking at the way computers talk to each other, have found very obvious security problems and have done things that they probably shouldn't have. But it's that inquisitiveness and that desire to learn the fundamental building blocks that I think is the foundation that makes a great hacker.
That's interesting. You know, again, there's so much to ask you and so much to have a conversation about. But you know, I realize that, you know, that some hackers are programmer oriented. I know, you know, you were talking about how some hackers are more network oriented. You know, they have an area or a passion that they drive into, whether it's programming languages, operating systems, network, hardware, software, and all that. So I realize that probably my next question might somewhat have to, you know, fall under one of those categories. But, you know, when it comes to selecting a target, you know, and maybe we'll just, you know, maybe from your standpoint, you know, when it comes to selecting a target to hack, you know, what are some of those things that you think about or that you're looking for when you're selecting those targets?
So there's two answers to that question. One answer is, what's the most interesting thing? Because if you're being driven by inquisitiveness, then you're looking for things that are interesting. And so, you know, I have an acquaintance of mine who, let's say, got access to some government systems that he shouldn't have because he was looking for UFOs, and he wanted to see, were there hidden files that talked about UFOs on there?
Are there really UFOs? Are there really UFOs?
Well, he didn't find the answer, and he got into a lot of trouble. But, you know, so that's sort of one answer, is whatever's interesting. And then the other answer is, and I think this is probably the bigger answer, whatever's easiest. So I have a little story here. One of the things I did in my time is I worked as a technical advisor on the TV show Mr. Robot. And my job on Mr. Robot was to help them come up with hacks that would look realistic on TV and would stand up to the scrutiny of other hackers, so that the show wouldn't be criticized, and also so that they could do it in a realistic and authentic way. And so what they would do is they'd give me problems, and they'd be like, okay, so Elliot needs to get access to a car, and he needs to be able to then drive the car away for this part of the show. Okay. We think that he should break into the database of the company, the ride-sharing company that controls the cars, and put in a fake account, and then use that fake account to get in. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, I can see that. I can see that. And so I had to think about it. And I looked into how this particular ride-sharing company worked. And what I found was the way they worked is they have an RFID, which is the close proximity authentication things you see for opening doors, the badges you touch to a door and it opens the door. And they implemented a lock on the car that works off of one of these badges. And so when you go to borrow the car, you type in your details, it then tells the car to allow that badge to have access. And so you go up, you touch the car, it opens the door, you get into the car. The keys to the car are always in the car. They're padlocked usually to the steering column. And because the keys are in the car, and most cars now have a starter button, once you're inside the car, all you have to do is press start, the car starts, and you drive off. And so I'm like, well, why didn't he just put a brick through the window? And they're like, what? Well, that's how I'd hack it. I put a brick through the window, open the door, get in, drive off. I don't have to hack any firewalls. There's no evidence left behind that I've been messing around with the company. And the whole thing took me 30 seconds. And they're like, but that doesn't look very good on TV. Like, well, but that's hacking, you know?
And like you said, that was the easiest way to do it.
Yep.
Too funny. Too funny. Well, that's a great story. You know, sometimes we complicate things, don't we? As you know, sometimes just we as people just make something so complicated when it can't actually be so easy. You know. So
and that actually is the hacker's advantage. The more complicated a system is, the more vulnerabilities it's going to have.
So, so that kind of segues me. You talked about complicated, so easy to hack. So what makes someone a target to get hacked? You know, that we talk about people or business, what makes them a target?
So I think the first thing that people need to realize is that everybody is a target. And one of the reasons I've been doing training sessions for schools is because I think we've done a horrible job of preparing kids in schools for what the world is like when they come out, and even the threats that they face as kids. I have 3 daughters myself, and I've experienced, and they're all now all teenagers, and I've experienced the things that they had to go through, and some of the terrible things that happened while they were in school to some of their friends, and some of the challenges that friends have had on the internet, things like bullying. And I wanted to better prepare them and their friends, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. The reality is, we need to teach people from the very first moment we can that everyone is a potential target. The only thing that varies is what you're a target for. Now, if you're just some kid in a school, you're probably not going to be the target of a nation state, like a foreign country or something. But on the other hand, criminals or bullies or people who just want to take advantage of you will see you as a target, and they will try to do things to convince you. And that's why the first weapon that all people need to have to defend against hackers is actually a hacker's weapon. It's called being cynical. Hackers are some of the most cynical people in the world. And by cynical, I mean, we don't trust anybody. We verify everything. If you tell me your name is Bob, I'm going to go and look up in everything I can find to confirm your name really is Bob. And if I can't, I'm not going to believe it until I have proof. I might keep calling you Bob, but I'm not going to trust it. And that's a hacker's methodology to staying safe. And it's the same approach to when you want to go after someone as a target. Be cynical. Again, find out as much information as you can.
Mark, you've really given a lot of great information. You shared a lot of great stories, and I just want to ask one last question. Being also courteous of your time, is that so? What recommendation that you have for the young kids today? And that for their life and where they're going, technology. I mean, just share with them. What do you recommend as far as cybersecurity, career and technical education? Oh, what's your opinion?
So first of all, become hackers, please. I need to see more hackers out there. Hey, boys, girls, doesn't matter. However you identify, we want you to come and be part of what we do. Because at the end of the day, I'm getting old and I want to see younger hackers coming up. And the only way that we're going to see more hackers coming into the community is if more hackers are grown in schools and decide that they want to join us. And so be inquisitive, look into how some of these cool things happen. And the reality is some of the cool stuff that I've done is within your reach. Right? You mentioned at the start the Tesla hack. The irony is, it was probably one of the easier hacks I've done in a long time. It was certainly complicated and it took a long time, but it involved some very simple techniques. Right? For example, one of the first things was that I discovered that there was a socket inside the car that was for networking. And I found that by taking the car apart. And I literally took the car apart on my lawn. All my neighbors thought I was completely crazy. But I found this socket and I plugged a laptop into it. And suddenly I had access to the network that was inside the car. Right? That's something that anyone can do. Right? This kind of experimenting with things and doing stuff, anyone can do. And so, my advice is get out there and experiment with things. Obviously, as I said before, make sure you experiment with stuff that you've got permission to have access to. But also engage with the hacker community itself. There are things called hacker spaces out there. These are clubs that hackers belong to where they teach people about hacking, where they do hacking projects themselves. And they welcome new people to come in, participate, be part of it, come to some of these. There are conferences all over the country that you can come to and you can be part of, and you can learn stuff. Now, for some of you younger kids, obviously you should probably bring an adult when you come to these things, but come, be part of it. The youngest I've seen at DEF CON was a 9-year-old. And that 9-year-old was soldering, making badges and doing stuff. The sooner you start doing things, the faster you'll learn. And you don't have to have access to expensive things to do it either. Because if you go to places like hackerspaces and you go to conferences, people will give you access to things to help you do that. And there are a lot of companies and a lot of projects out there that will give kids technology that will help you to do it. The cheapest computer system that you can start to learn to hack on is something like a Raspberry Pi that will cost about $20 or $30. And you can pick them up used even cheaper than that. And people will give them away sometimes as well. You don't have to have a really expensive shiny iPad or really expensive laptop. You just have to have a piece of technology. I know one kid, very famous kid, who was one of the best phone freaks in the world, and he was blind.
Wow.
And he started just by whistling into the telephone.
That's incredible.
All he had was a telephone and his voice. Hacking is about taking what's around you and making it do stuff. So you can do it.
That's exciting. And to keep all that on a positive note, we need more hackers so that we can better secure our nation, our election system, all this infrastructure. Hackers help us also to for the teachers and administrators out there, we need them in order to help us create a more free and secure infrastructure. Mark, wow, I really appreciate your time and talking to the students. There's going to be some chat questions that we have, and we'll be filling them. But thank you so much for being with us and joining us. And I'm hoping we can call on you again sometime to come join us.
And I'll make sure you've got my contact details and put them out there.
Fantastic.
I want kids to talk to me. Come speak to me, and I'll talk to you or I'll introduce you to other people, because we want more hackers.
This is great. Maybe we'll get you into a classroom and you can just talk to a small group of kids.
Love it.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, talk to you later.